All right, hello again. So in this video, we're going to go over an introduction to Figma. We're going to talk about all this stuff, lots of stuff here. So we're going to talk about what Figma is, what can it do, some other products that are related to it. We'll talk about the main screen and the dashboard. We'll look at some of the different panels. We'll talk about different parts of it, like projects and files and pages and layers and things like that. Just kind of a tour, general introduction to Figma. So what is Figma? Figma is a design tool that's used a lot in user interface or UI design and user experience design or UX design. It's kind of the standard now. I found this graph here that shows Figma over time compared to some other apps, and you can see that Figma's kind of got, I don't know, 80-something% of the market share. Used to be way back in 2017, Sketch was very popular. Sketch is Mac only. It's actually looks a lot like Figma, or did anyway. Yeah, that one's kind of gone down a little bit, and there are others as well. Adobe XD. Adobe tried to buy Figma semi-recently, but it didn't work out for them. Too bad for that stock price stuff, but I'm not going to worry about that. And then there's also, but Adobe XD is very similar to Sketch. It's kind of maybe was a kind of a copy of Sketch a little bit. And so is Figma, maybe, but I digress. And then you got Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, which are also used sometimes to design user interfaces. But really, Figma is kind of the standard now. It kind of took off during COVID, probably because of its collaboration abilities. So it's really good for collaboration. You can even work on the same file at the same time, which can be kind of nutty. But yeah, it allows collaboration and remote work, and everybody was remote, obviously, during COVID because that was the safe way to do it. And a lot of design still is remote. So anyway, so we're just going to take a tour of the different few of the main screens. This is kind of the dashboard, and then we'll look at projects and pages and layers and some of the tools just very quickly and things like that. Other things that are in Figma though, or part of the Figma, I guess, family of products, if you want to say it that way. So here you can make a new Figma, a new design file, which is kind of what we're talking about mostly. There is also FigJam, however, which we may see. But FigJam is whiteboarding, diagramming, brainstorming tool. People do use it to do wireframing, I think, a little bit. And also things like card sorting, where you get content for a website or a product and then sort it according to logical means, things like that. So it's a pretty useful tool. It's kind of fun. And it's similar to Figma, but not the same thing. There's also, at the time of this video, and I'm doing this video right now because there's a new user interface for Figma itself. So I thought I should probably do a new intro video. You may see the old interface in videos. You probably will. It's actually pretty similar. A lot of the functionality is the same or similar. But Figma, the interface does change all the time, just as a little side note. So you might see things in videos that don't look exactly the same, but I have confidence you guys can figure it out. But yeah, so right now they've introduced a new slide deck sort of feature or product, actually. It's a different product. Also up here you have a button where you can import files. By the way, the Figma files themselves kind of live in the cloud. You can store them locally. There is a local or a desktop version of Figma, but most people, I think, run it in the browser. So that's one of the beautiful parts about Figma is you don't have to really download anything. You log in and it's all in the cloud. I hate saying cloud, but it's true. So there's nothing to really install. You can install a Figma desktop app if you want to, but I don't think most people do. Although some people do. So either way, whatever you want. And they're pretty much the same. So you can import external files or Figma files. The Figma files themselves are .fig if you ever see one. I might give you one sometime. So that is up here, and then you can see I've got some files here under recent. So if we go back up to the top left, we'll just work our way around here. You've got a search field, so I can search for things. If I search for something called test, then I will see things that have test in the name. Oh, I've got to stop using the name test. Oh, it's actually searching inside of files as well, so that's why that's coming up. but you can obviously search for things using the search bar. You've got a search field. You've got a recent button, which will show you things that you've worked on recently, which is nice. You probably won't have this drafts button here because I have not moved around some of my drafts, which I'm supposed to, and they're in this area here. So I've got to do that. I'll do that, I promise. Down here below that, you've got a team drop down. So teams are just like they sound. You can have groups of people that are in a team and they can be working on a project. Teams can include outside members and inside members too, like stakeholders or clients, that kind of thing. If I click on that, there's a drop down with tons of teams because I've had a lot, sometimes different ones for different classes. Most of these are EDU teams or educational teams, which means they're kind of like pro teams. You also get, I think for free, you get a free team when you sign up, but it's kind of limited as far as like how many projects you can have in it and things like that. But that's where you can find different teams there. Underneath there, you'll also see a draft. So that is drafts again are files that are in, but they're not really filed away. They're kind of things you're working on. They're drafts, right? Just like you're writing a paper. So that's under drafts. I could click a plus here and make a new file if I wanted to. That's another way to make a new file. I can click on all projects. That will show me all the projects in a particular team. So this one only has 2. And so projects are where you can store multiple files. So if we drill down, you've got teams that can have multiple projects. You can have projects that have multiple files, and you can obviously have a ton of files, right? So that's how that's kind of organized. You can share also. You can share at all these levels. You can share by the team level, by the project level, and individual file level. There's usually a share button somewhere in the top right that you can do that with. But for now, you can see that I'm up here in the projects, or I can go to drafts here and I can see some options to create some new stuff. And it's pretty far away here because there's only one draft in here. But if I look up here on the top right, you can see create new. And if I click on that drop down, I can make a new design file, a new FigJam board, or a new slide deck. Those are the products, right? Or I could import something. So that's underneath that blue button, call to action, right? And then I've got different ways to view things by list or by thumbnails, and I can sort by different methods as well. So that's all up here in the top right. Let's say I'm in my project. I'm gonna make a new project. So up here, you probably won't have to do this too much, but you can, I guess. You can go up here and click on add a project, right? And then it will ask you what the name of it is. I'll say test 2 because I'm running out of names. And then I'm going to click continue. And then I can say who can access this. So the sharing and permissions is at all levels as well, by team, by project, by file. So I can say if I invite these people, can they edit it or can they view it? What do I want them to be able to do? The team that we're in itself, they can access it or they can view it. That means they can do whatever they want or they can view things. Or I could remove the team if I wanted to. So I'm going to say, great project. I didn't add anybody to it. And now I've got a couple of different projects in here. You can see they're starred. I left out starred. You can star different projects. If I go back to all projects here, I can star or unstar them to kind of have them show up here in this sidebar. This sidebar used to be crazy huge because it would just have every project and every team in it and every file in it kind of thing, and it got overwhelming. So recently they've tried to clean things up a little bit as far as Figma goes and how it's organized. But if I'm inside of a project now, I double click to go inside of there. There's nothing there, but if I click, I'm going to make a new file, new design file, let's say. And now I'm inside of an actual file, and this is the Figma interface itself. So we'll take a look at that too, since we're here. Let's back up a little bit though and say, like, what does Figma, what's it used for? Let's go here. So here I've got some super basic sort of a starter wireframe thing. You might see something similar that I give you. So what are wireframes? Wireframes are sort of blueprints for designs. You think about a blueprint for a building, it's just blue lines, right? It shows walls and where things are and windows, but not much else, right? So think about low fidelity wireframes as the same thing. Low fidelity means they don't have a lot of detail. So mostly what low fidelity wireframes have are boxes like this and text, right? So that's basically it. So they show what's on a page or what's on a screen and where it goes and what it is. So a lot of times you're going to be using two things. You're going to be using rectangular containers. So I can just hit R on my keyboard and drag a box. There's a box right there, right? Fancy. And then I can hit T on my keyboard and click somewhere and I can start typing text. You can see that starts to populate this layers panel over here in the left. I'm going to go over these panels here in a second. But that is the basics of, most wireframes is some boxes, because we're in boxes usually, in an interface design, and then some text, right? And you can move things around, select them and drag them around, and kind of like every other app that's kind of like this, right? If you've ever never used a design app like this, it will take a little bit of getting used to, but if you've used apps before, it's very similar to how Illustrator works or Photoshop or almost anything else. You click on something, you can move it around, you can resize it from the corner, and that's mostly it. You can see in this example file, I've got a grid set up, and I also have sort of the settings that I used for the grid. Usually you're going to use a grid to help you kind of line things up. So if I hit R on my keyboard and draw a box, and then I put it inside that grid, it will snap to that grid and make it easy for me to sort of do things quickly, right? So I just made 3 different little things there, 3 boxes, and they're just boxes, right? They could represent images or boxes that I'm going to put text in, whatever. But yeah, and it's supposed to be quick and easy. And this doing wireframes is a planning step, right? So it should be easier and faster to do it this way than start coding like, oh, I'm going to code a page. I'm going to put 3 columns in it and a footer. And then you code it and you're like, wait, I wanted 4 columns. You could do 4 columns in Figma in, 15 seconds. Maybe some coders could do it that fast, but I don't know. But here you see we're seeing a desktop version of the wireframe with 12 columns, which is very typical, and then a mobile too. So this is for web, right? And it's got four columns here, but you don't have to use all those, but those are in there. That's kind of a standard thing. Okay, so we talked about teams and drafts and projects. I didn't talk, a couple things I forgot from the main file. So if I want to get back to my files, I should show you that. I click on this little Figma icon, and I go back to files, and I get back to that main screen. 2 things that I wanted to show you there before we look at the actual file page a little bit more. Down here at the bottom left, you've got Explore Community. So Figma has set up this sort of open source system where you can create plugins which add functionality to Figma. You can create icon sets, libraries, all kinds of things. I can roll over that, that's fun. And then you can share them, right? So people are very nice in that they share different assets and resources. You can search for them. You can also search for them in your account. But say I wanted a UI kit, user interface design kit, and you're going to see there's going to be like that's one of the little problems is there's going to be like thousands of things to choose from. They do have ratings that people like them. You can see how many users it has. But if I wanted to use this, I could click open in Figma, and then it would be inside of my Figma. I think I just did it. Yeah, there we go. So here is that file, and I didn't even look at it before I did that. But I wanted to show you how you can use things from the community. So there's a free UI Figma kit from the community. It's still populating, looks like. Wow, that's a fancy one. I might take a look at that. It can get overwhelming though. There are thousands and thousands of assets and shared things in the community, and there's more all the time. So just be aware of that, right? But I can go back here and get back to my files. Here's my files, right? So I can get back to my files there, right there. So Ooh, I'm in my starter plan now. See, I'm in the wrong team. There we go. So starter plans do have a limit. So that was the community. Let's see. I think that's probably good on that. I wanted to show you a little bit about the actual design screens as well. Before I forget, well, let's open one here. I'm just going to open an empty project. There's nothing in here, right? And then I'm going to create a new design file. Now I'm in a new design file. So I wanted to show you a little bit of the interface, not too much, just to get you your bearings here. Before I forget, down here at the bottom right, there is a button that's help and resources. If I click on that and go to keyboard shortcuts right there, it will show you, surprise, keyboard shortcuts. But it's not only that, it will show you a lot of ways things you can do with the interface, for example. For example, zoom, right? If I click on zoom here, it says pan, space, drag, space bar and drag. So if I don't have anything in this file, I'm gonna make a little rectangle. I hold down the space bar and I drag and I can pan around my file, right? So it will show you the shortcuts, but also ways to interface or change the interface. Zoom in and zoom out, same as a browser, command plus and command minus, etc. There's lots of them. They're under these categories here. Some of them are standard, like copy and paste and things like that. But there's tons of those in there. It even does this fun thing when you use them, it highlights them, or tries to anyway. So that's under here. You could just leave this open for a while if you wanted to, so you can get a feel for how things work. So now we're in a design file. So I wanted to show you a couple of things here about how that's organized. I don't have a name for this thing, so if I, oops, I just clicked on that, didn't I? I don't really have this named yet. I can click here and double click and name it video test. Just changing it here. They kind of move some things around here, so I'm getting used to it. So now I've got a name for that file. I can now minimize these side panels. So they're trying to make Figma a little bit simpler and cleaner. Like all other software over the years, and Figma's not that old. I don't know, 10 years? About 10 years. I'm guessing, actually. Mid-teens. Yeah, something like that. It's in its teen years. Or its tens. You can minimize things and sort of clean things up and get things out of the way. Figma started out super simple, and it's gotten more complex over the years, just like every other piece of software. It's called feature creep, right? Feature creep is when companies add features because they have to keep people interested, and they eventually get too many features, and then you got problems, right? So they're trying to simplify a little bit. So this interface is slightly different than what it was a year or what it was before, where this toolbar was up at the top, and you couldn't hide this really, and things, or you could, but it was different. So looking over here at the left side, we'll go around the world here again. You've got your file here. You can have pages. So these are different ways to organize your files. So if I wanted another page, and a lot of times you might have a page for a double click there, and I'll say desktop. And then let's say I wanted one for desktop, and maybe I want one for mobile. So I just click this plus here, and that makes a new page, and then obviously that's going to show up like something can be on the desktop page, and then there's nothing on the mobile, and I could put something in there like a mobile view, and there you go. So those are pages. You also have sections. Maybe you'll see that in a little bit, but yeah. So that's pages. You also have, whenever you have things on your pages, you have layers. So right now I've only got one thing on this page called desktop, and it's this rectangle, right? So as I select this, it gets selected here in the layers. If I select it here, it gets selected in the work area. If I make something else, I'll make another rectangle, fancy. Now I've got two. I can reorder them over here. Just like in Photoshop and other apps, you can just click on them and drag to reorder them. But anything I make, if I make a text layer, I'll click T, or I'll type T, and then I'll type text. Right, there's a text layer. I can click on that and drag that around, but you can see over here on the left, There's the first rectangle I made. There's the second one. There is the text, and I can lock or hide them here as well. Just like other apps. But if you've never used any of those apps, this is going to be new. I realize that. And you can rearrange here, like I said. So if I drag this text below that rectangle, I can't see it because it's underneath, right? Things like that. So that is over here on the left. You've got pages and layers, and this can get, like I said, I don't know if I showed you this. This is the beginning low fidelity wireframe. Stepping back in time about 10 minutes. This is the low fidelity wireframe with just boxes and text. That's where you start out. And then a lot of times you're going to iterate or enhance that design until you end up here when you get to a prototype. So a prototype is a more pixel perfect and sometimes interactive version of your wireframes that has images and text and fonts and colors and all that, which the low fidelity don't, right? So low fidelity wireframes, just boxes and text. High fidelity, boxes, text, images, fonts, colors, icons, everything you can think of, right? So iterative design means you're going to improve slowly to improve or add to the design over time or as you're working on it. So you start out this way and then you end up here. So there's not really a clear delineation between like high fidelity and low fidelity. It's just you get there eventually, right? And as you're working on a design, so it'll get more and more detailed, more and more refined until you say like, okay, that's done and that's the design. Sorry, I left that part out, but I wanted to make sure you knew that because this is the prototype stage. When you have in the prototype stage, or even in the wireframe stage, actually, you can make it into a prototype, a working prototype. That means I can actually link these together. So I click on a link and it goes to the other frame, for example. And I haven't told you what a frame yet is either, but so I will in a second. Okay, so let's get back to our blank. Here's our blank, right? So what I want to do is just show you a little bit of what you can do over here as well, and then some of the basics that you probably should know if you're going to do anything. So down here at the bottom is the tools, obviously, down here at the very bottom. And one of the main tools is you got your select tool by default. That just means you're going to click on something and move it. Any tool that has the little arrow next to it means there's more tools underneath. So you've got a hand tool there, which is what you can also get that just by hitting the space bar. That's a shortcut. So some of these have shortcuts, or all of them have shortcuts actually. This one is important. This is the frame tool. So the frame is sort of a special grouping of elements. So let's say I was going to make this into something. I'm going to change the color of this real fast just so we don't lose it. There, we've got the world's worst designs, but I've got 3 things there. I could select all that, which I can just click and drag around it. And then I could right click, which I wanted to make sure you knew that. If you right click on things, you get contextual menus that will let you do lots of things. So I could group that, I could do all kinds of things to it. But what I wanted to show you was frame selection. So group means like it sounds, you're going to group them together. If I click on that now, it's all one piece, right? I'm going to undo, which is Command Z, or ungroup. I got to ungroup, I guess. Ungroup. But what I wanted to do is show you frame. So if I click and drag around this again, and if I right click and go to frame selection, now it has this different icon. So frames are how things are, usually screens are organized. Well, not just screens, everything is kind of organized. They're kind of like folders for your elements. You can think of them that way. So it has a little disclosure triangle. There's a fancy word, right? Term. If I click on that, you can see that my text, my rectangle, and my other rectangle are all inside of this frame. So frames are kind of how you organize things in your layers. And then also, when I click on a frame here, there's the frame I just clicked on. That's what I can export. Down here at the bottom, if you want to export a screen, let's say this is a screen, I would click on this little plus, and then I can export it. Just click on export, and now I've exported that as a beautiful design that nobody will pay me for. Right. So frames are important. If I want to make a standard size frame, it's very easy. I can just click on, hit F for the frame tool, and then over here on the right, which is your properties panel, you will see tons of built-in frames. So here's a phone, for example. So if I click on phone, and then I'm gonna go iPhone 14 and 15 Pro, and you're probably watching this, at the end of time, and you're on the iPhone 700, but we're at iPhone 15 right now. And if I click on that, that makes a frame that is exactly the right size to design for if it's an iPhone 15 or 14. I can also say, well, maybe if I'm going to scroll, often you're going to scroll if it's a web page, not if it's an app, but if it's apps too. I can click on and resize this and make it longer, of course, things like that. The other thing I want to show you about this is, so that's frames. There's desktop frames in there. There's mobile frames, presentation, watches. Here's an Apple Watch frame, right? Stuff like that. So those are all built in there. You can add your own, of course, too. And you can make any size frame you want by hitting F and dragging. That makes a frame too. You can make anything you want. And then you can see how big they are over here. But what I wanted to show you also that this is context sensitive over here, meaning this is the properties panel for whatever I select. So if I select a box, I get some properties for a box. If I select some text, I get some properties for some text. You get the idea, right? So what appears over here in the properties panel depends on what I select over here. So that is that. So this is going to be depending on what you have selected. This is going to change. A couple of other quick things, and then we're just about done here at the bottom. And our tools, we kind of talked about some of those. There's our frame tool there. Underneath there, there's a section which lets you divide parts of your page up into if you want to. We'll leave that at that for now. And there's a slice tool, which I doubt ever doesn't get used a whole lot, but that's underneath there. There's also these shapes. We've been using rectangle. I've been hitting R on the keyboard to get that, but you can also click on the tool if you want. But there's a line tool and ellipse and basic shapes and things. There's also to place an image. So image and video. Obviously, you can put images and things on, even videos, on your prototypes or on your wireframes or your mockups. Sometimes people call high fidelity wireframes mockups or prototypes, depending if they're linked together. So that is underneath there. And then next to that, you've got a pen tool. So Figma does do vector shapes, just like Illustrator does, and Photoshop, I guess. So you can design logos in there. You can make vector shapes. You can make icons, all that kind of stuff. So that is in there as well. Here's our type tool that we used already. I've just been hitting T for that. There's also a comment tool. So again, one of the great things about Figma is it's very collaborative. So if I hit the comment tool, I could go in here and say, Mark, you are fired. This design is terrible. I'll just leave it like that. So anybody who comes in the file that you share the file with will see that and say, oh yeah, I forgot to fire Mark because this design is terrible. So that's the comment tool. And again, it's shared. You can share it with clients. You can share it with your coworkers or other designers, whatever you need. And then down here at the next to that is an actions button that will enable some things like find and replace and some other things. You got assets and plugins under there. I don't have time to really go into all that, but that's underneath there as well. And then the last button is the dev mode button. So dev mode is something that has been semi-recently added. So what dev mode allows you to do is, if I click that, let's see if it works. Yes. So if I select something, it's going to give me not the ways to design that. Let me click on this guy here. So I'm in dev mode right now, and I click on that, and I see things like measurements and border, and I even see this is CSS. So it'll show you can get code out of Figma, directly out of Figma using dev mode. So that's this last button here. This was a paid feature. Maybe when you see it, it'll be paid again. But right now, it's letting me do it for free. Kind of goes back and forth, maybe a little bit. But that's what that last button is. So this is the designer mode, right? You're designing stuff, you're moving stuff around, you're doing that. And then you might hand this off or share this file with the developer, the coder who's going to actually make it happen, and they're going to want to see different information, right? Oh, here's stuff about dev mode. That does remind me, though, that there's a lot of resources for Figma. They have a great YouTube channel. They have a whole team dedicated to teaching people about Figma. I'm doing it too, maybe a little bit, right? But there's so many resources available. And the community, the designer community is great. You know, there's a lot of information to be had. Let me get our demo. I almost forgot to mention there is a traditional sort of command menu underneath the Figma icon as well. We've seen how you can click on that and go back to your files, but there's also a file menu where you can save copies and things and start new files. There's an edit menu where you can do copy and paste and find and things like that. I'm not seeing it all here because we're zoomed in. Let me zoom out a little bit. There's a view menu where you can change the view. One is the minimize the UI, for example, shift. If I go shift / you'll see the UI will minimize, things like that. I can also click on this button. And then, but there's a lot of items under there for individual objects, for text, arranging items, moving them back and forth, up and down in the stack. There's a section on vectors, plugins. Remember I mentioned there's lots of plugins that you can use that will add functionality to Figma. Hundreds, thousands of them probably. Widgets, you can leave voice memos and things and that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to go through all these, obviously, because there's a lot there. But I just wanted to make sure that you knew that there was a menu underneath that icon right there. I think that is it. Let me make sure I covered all this stuff that I wanted to cover pretty much. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Sorry if that was quick, but I wanted to give you a fast sort of 10,000 foot view of Figma and what it does and just the basics of the interface. Obviously, there's a lot more to it. We have a whole class, GDS 72, that focuses on Figma. It's a big topic now, but you can do basics pretty easily. You know, I can hit R on the keyboard and draw a rectangle and plan my web page or my app or whatever. So that's, it's not rocket science all the time. You could probably draw a rocket too. All right, so I hope that helps a little bit, and I will talk to you again later.